Hey T-Bops, what is up? It is Randy. Hope you guys are all doing well. As you know, I've done a few repotting videos and they've all been done with some sort of bark or bark mixture. However, I've realized that not everybody, or not everyone, excuse me, has access to a good bark mixture. However, I believe everybody probably has access to at least sphagnum moss. So in this video, I am going to do a demonstration on how to repot your plants with 100% sphagnum moss. So if you're new to the Black Orchid Project channel, please go on and hit the subscribe button. Also hit the notification bell so you can be notified when new content comes out. If you are an Instagrammer, head on over to the Black Orchid Project on Instagram. That's where I post pictures of plants, of my plants, other plants. I also post a lot of updates on different plants that you see here on the channel. So now that that's all out the way, let's move on with what we are here for. So, like I said, a lot of times you cannot find a good bark mixture. If you want bark and need bark, you can look down in the description. There are some links to order bark to be delivered directly to your home. Also, I am going to put a link to some sphagnum moss also. However, you can usually find this sphagnum moss at your local big box hardware store. This is what it looks like. It will expand, so you'll get a lot of use out of this. But if you can't find it, it will be a link down below. So this is what it looks like. It is basically just a moss. It holds water very, very well. It's easy to read on when it needs to be watered, things like that. The only thing about it is you'd want to make sure that you feed very often, because this really doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it like you would find in bark and charcoal and things like that. So, but it is a great alternative, and most nurseries use this to get their plants started, and a lot of them actually repot in after the plants get going in this, because it's just so easy to maintain. So without further ado, let's get on with the repotting. All right, so let's get going with this. So as you can see, we have a plant here. The spike is gone, or the flower's gone, and this spike has actually died off. So we are going to cut down the spike and inspect some of the roots. So like that one obviously can go. These have been dipped already in alcohol. So we're going to snip a couple of these off. Any of them that looks dry. And this has a big root system, so I am going to kind of prune this root system down some to get rid of some of these really, really, really long ones. So what I'm going to do is find somewhere that has kind of like a little break in it and just go on and snip that off. Some of these really long ones, like these really, really long ones here, I'm just going to kind of reduce those down a little bit. So I'm going to find some breaks in them and just kind of snip them off here. Let's see here, make sure, and here. So like that was going to break off anyway. So as you can see, I've kind of reduced this down some. And there's some really big roots here, some really good roots here to support this. And obviously, since this is dead, I am going to go on and cut this as close to the plant as I can. There you go, so that's gone. Now, a lot of times I get people talking about my styrofoam. You guys know I like to use my styrofoam, but if you're going to use bark, it's not necessarily as useful, or is not needed as much, because these big pieces you can pick out and drop in the bottom. And if you have bark, you can drop bark in the bottom. But when you're using sphagnum moss, I really like to make sure that there is a drainage layer, because obviously this is small, can get caught in your holes and kind of obstruct the drainage. So I am going to just go on and put a few pieces of that in there like that. So as you can see, we just put some popcorn. This is the popcorn that does not dissolve, so this stuff will stay in the environment forever. So I just recycle it, and people always ask me, can I use it over? And a lot of times I will use it over, even on the next repot. So Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get that out the way, and I am going to take a little bit and just kind of ball it up here. And well, I'm sorry, I'm just going to take this first and sprinkle this in here so I can get a nice little layer that's going to cover up that popcorn. Next, I am going to get a layer. I want to get a nice little ball right in the middle here. So here's the middle of the roots. I'm going to spread those out. And I'm going to take just a little ball, just kind of wrap it up here and make a little ball out of it. And I'm going to set it in the middle. And then I am going to pull the roots around it just to keep some in the middle there. And then I'm going to set this in here. And now I want to get these roots nice and low. You know, I like to have the crown right about here. So I want the crown right at the top, but I want these roots to be embedded in. So I'm going to take these roots, and of course I'm going to take my handy chopsticks, and I'm just going to kind of work these roots in here with that little bitty ball of sphagnum moss in the middle. Now, I am just going to start taking my sphagnum moss and putting it here a little bit at a time and working it in between these roots with my chopsticks. So, just going to work that in there. And you can just work this in. This takes a little bit longer to work in place. Now, the good thing about sphagnum moss is that it holds moisture very well. And so you don't tend to water as much with sphagnum moss. I think with sphagnum moss, you can also kind of regulate how dry or wet your plant is, because with sphagnum moss, you can touch the top and you can see how dry it is. If there's any kind of give on the top of your sphagnum moss, then you know that more than likely the moss down at the bottom is going to be it's still going to be a little bit moist. Once the top gets a little crunchy, and you know it's been crunchy for a day or two, then you know it's probably time to repot your, it's time to rewater your plant there. So as you can see, I'm just kind of putting this in, and I am going to go in and just push this down, work this down into the middle and around the edges of the pot. Now, you don't want to stack it in too much, like it doesn't need to be compressed, but I do like to get it, try to make sure it's around most of the roots, and that way it also helps it maintain a little stability. So I am just going to just put this in here like this. And I like to get up above the first layer of roots, and I try to get as many roots as I can in there. So this one is being a little stubborn, so I'm just going to stick them down and then put some moss on them just to hold them down, and they usually will start to grow more down than out of the pot. So again, I'm just going to work this around. And down the sides. And of course, like I said, get it down in the middle. Now the thing is, this won't really settle as much as like bark. If you use like some of the smaller orchid bark, once you get it in and get it wet, it'll kind of settle. So you do want to take your time to kind of poke this around and get this down in the middle of your roots. Like I said, you just want it to be stable too. One thing about, like I said, about the sphagnum moss, it will help stabilize your plants and keep them nice and square in your pots. They don't tend to fall over as much and things like that as they do with the bark. So I'm just going to kind of show you here and just finish this up. And like I said, I like to bring it up to right about the first layer of roots, and or above the first layer of roots. So I'm going to take this and I am going to go on and put it above this particular leaf, and I do believe this leaf will die off after this repotting, but that'll be fine. I just want to get this root covered and get it growing down in the pot instead of out of the pot. So we're going to cover that like that. And again, just kind of work it down. I'll probably take a little bit more time and work it down after the video. I kind of get this cleaned up. As you can see now, I got water all over the place, but that's okay. Get this cleaned up here. Get that packed down really nicely. And as you can see, we have our plant repotted, and now it is in sphagnum moss. And as you can see, I'm just going to work that down in there. And that will be good. This will actually be good for a year or more. You can probably get 2 blooms out of this, or maybe even 2 years out of this repotting with this sphagnum moss. So as you can see, we have a nice drainage layer here. All the roots are in sphagnum moss, and we are ready to go into growth season and hopefully into bloom season. So there you have it, a full repot of a Phalaenopsis orchid in 100% sphagnum moss. Like I said, you definitely want to work the sphagnum moss down. I think bark is a little bit easier because when it gets wet, it'll settle down in the middle and you can just add some more. With the moss, it kind of settles in, so you want to make sure you do work it down a little bit. So it's a little more time consuming, but not very long. You can probably do it still in about 5 to 10 minutes at the most. So the cool thing about sphagnum moss, like I mentioned before, is that when it is wet, it is a dark orange color, and when it is dry, it is like a pale color. So that way you can monitor your plants even from afar, and if you walk by and it's crunchy and it looks pale all the way down, then it's time to water. You can just run some water on top, literally for like 30 seconds or a minute, or you can just soak it for 30 seconds or a minute, and it will grab that water and hydrate your roots for you. So it definitely makes the maintenance a lot easier for your plants. So that is going to do it for this video today. If you haven't done so, please go on and hit the subscribe button, ring the notification bell so you can be notified of new content. If you got something out of the video, go on and give me a thumbs up or leave me a comment. I love talking to you guys, as you know. And if you need to ask questions, you can do it here, or you can do it over on Instagram at the Black Orchid Project. There you can send me pictures of your plant and I can make a better assessment and give you better advice. And if you choose to do so, please join me over on Patreon. Support the channel, support me, it's greatly appreciated. And I try to give my Patreon something every month. Lately, we've been doing a drawing for a plant, and so there's a chance if you join the Patreon, you can get one of the plants you see in the video. So that is going to do it for this video. As always, be safe. More importantly, be kind. Never give up on them. Until next time, peace.